So the stumbling block still exists. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, talking Penn State. We got Tim Aiden on the line from Black Shoe Diaries. We encourage you here to lock it in if you love college football for the best debate, discussion, and analysis right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So, Tim, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I guess maybe it's because I didn't expect Penn State to win yesterday, and in the beginning, it looked like they were about to get boat raced, and I guess forcing a fumble right at the goal line when they're about to make it 14-0 certainly helped. But it was nice to see when they were down 21-0 early in the second half, and then all of a sudden Lamont Wade goes ham on Ohio State's offense, forces a couple fumbles, and Penn State converts those into touchdowns. Despite being forced to play a backup quarterback in Will Levis, who basically did what one of my Black Shoe Diary colleagues, Clay Sauertig, affectionately called Connecticut Tebow, which he basically ran right at Ohio State, and they weren't ready for it. So he picked up some yards in the beginning, and I think he ran for one of the touchdowns to eventually, as part of a 17-0 run for a 4-minute stretch in the third quarter, which all of a sudden you go from Ohio State comfortably up 21-0 to now it's 21-17. And, oh my goodness, Ohio State for the first time this year has to actually play, meaningful football, late into the third quarter and into the early fourth quarter. In fact, it wasn't until the early fourth quarter is when Fields hit Chris Olave to put them up 20-17. And ultimately, the defense adjusted to Levis, and Levis just had some trouble with throwing and being on par with his center Michael Menet as far as snaps are concerned. I lost count how many times Menet snapped the ball to Levis before he was ready, with all the crowd noise going on. So, but just in general, you could tell Ohio State was just simply the better team. But it was good to see Penn State fight back the way they did, and also you're thinking at times too, like, man, if Journey Brown hadn't dropped a pass on a crossing route going on the drive where they kicked a field goal, they could have had a touchdown perhaps and tied the game at 21, and then things really would have gotten interesting because Ohio State is not tied or trailed at all in the second half of the season. And would have been something to see. Now maybe I'm sure at some point, probably in the playoffs, they'll face some kind of adversity like that. But from their perspective, I think it might have been a blessing in disguise that Penn State did come back a little on them, so they at least got hit in the mouth before, say, Michigan next week or the playoff when the games everything will really be on the line for them.
I'm glad you mentioned Lamont Wade, because I certainly took note of him as well. Just made huge plays in averting that what would have been second touchdown, as you mentioned, with Justin Fields diving into the end zone, and what was ruled a touchdown initially, but was clearly a forced fumble before he reached the goal line. And then, of course, a couple plays that he made, both on a fumble recovery and a forced fumble again in that 17-point scurry that took Penn State from completely out of it to 21-17 and getting Ohio State a little bit nervous. But it really was also the catalyst was that 75-yard drive. So Penn State had 5 punts and nothing in the first half. Basically couldn't move the ball at 60-some yards of total offense in the first half. They came out on the drive that Sean Clifford got hurt, and Will Levis took over. And as you mentioned, it caught the Buckeyes off balance to a certain extent. He hit 6 of 11 passes, threw a pick, but gained some yardage on the ground, which really is not reflected in the rushing stats because of all the sack yardage they then incurred in the last 6 or 8 minutes of the game. But yeah, it was good to see Penn State get back in the ball game and see that we actually had a game on our hands with about 10 minutes left before Ohio State's defense kind of took control again. And as you mentioned, Chris Olave got between 2 defenders in the end zone. The safety didn't get over quite in time and made the play that pretty much sealed it.
Yeah, pretty much. It's and that catch by Olave. It did seem as if John Reed, who seemed to be covering him okay, he never turned around to try to make a play on the ball, which to me was a little baffling. I'm not sure what the secondary coaches at Penn State, Terry Smith and Tim Banks, are teaching them in practice. But I've seen this movie one too many times where it seems like a Penn State defender is right on the they're in a position to at least try to make a play on the ball, and they don't even turn around or try to get a hand up, try to leap or whatever. It seemed like he could have at least made some effort. Maybe Olave still would have caught it because he's that good, but at least from my perspective, it seemed like he could have tried to do something. And that's just kind of been the story of the secondary, especially these last few weeks. Now, to credit, Fields threw for less than 200 yards passing. So, and the pass rush, shout out to Yetur Gross-Matos. He came back in a big way yesterday, and it's unfortunately he had to leave the game with an undisclosed injury in the second half. But he ended up having about 9 tackles total. I'm pulling up the stats here. He had 9 tackles total, including 2 sacks and 3.5 tackles for losses. So, it was good to see him finally flash on the biggest stage for him. And I mentioned Lamont Wade. Of course, Micah Parsons also ended up forcing a fumble and had a fumble recovery of his own, which was part of his 10 tackles total.
Yeah, you had predicted a big game for Micah Parsons, and he pulled through. One of the top linebackers in the Big Ten. I think 2 other aspects that are worth noting is that Journey Brown, against a rush defense that's stacked, was able to gain 64 yards on 11 carries. It's too bad that Penn State was playing from behind so much. Maybe if they get the lead, then he gets 18 or 22 carries, and it's a different ball game. Because he can be more of an impact on the game. And then the other aspect is Justin Fields, despite the rushing yardage, doesn't really speak to how effective he was. Again, the sack yardage is totaled in how effective he was in just straight drop back situations where he would find a gap in the line, take off, and pick up key third downs. And there was a 4th and 5 in there as well where he picked up a first down with his legs.
Yeah, and that 4th and 5 call, I mean, I'd have to look back at, but it was baffling to me that they only had one. I think Jan Johnson or whoever was one. I think it was Jan Johnson in the middle on that play, but he was the only linebacker standing around there anywhere within Fields' range. And you think in that kind of situation you'd have maybe an additional linebacker, someone dropping down there to spy on Justin Fields, because that was just. All you needed was just the center to block Jan Johnson, and there was nobody else, within 10 yards near Fields for him to get after him. So, of course, he had an easy lane to pick up some big yardage. So I'm not sure what was going on in that play, but Fields was, to his credit. I mean, there's a reason why Penn State fans were disappointed when he decommitted and committed to Georgia, and of course, ultimately left Georgia because Kirby Smart decided not to play him much, and that ticked him off. And so here we are. But he showcased why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And there was another play that comes to mind. I remember the situation exactly, but I think it was a 3rd down, and Penn State was trying to get them off the field, and instead, it looked like one of Penn State defenders was going after him. Looked like they might get a hold of him for a sack, but he just, escapes that, scrambles a bit more, and I think he throws it to, I think it's to his tight end, who makes a nice catch just at the marker, which is just enough to move the chains. And so that just kind of showed you, what a dynamic player he is, and why Ohio State, all year long has been crushing its opponents, I guess with the exception of yesterday. But and why, in my opinion, I think Penn State may have just played against the eventual national champs yesterday.
Yeah, and if that turns out to be the case, it certainly is to Penn State's credit. That they hung in there, and that it was a competitive game till about 6 or 7 minutes left. Man, looking at this Rutgers situation, so what a letdown for Penn State after they come down from the mountaintop of let's go win the Big Ten. We're playing maybe the best team in the country. And that was just a hard-hitting, hard-fought game too. Man, there were grown men on the field just slugging it out in that one on both sides.